Picture this: the last show at a small, nearly forgotten movie theater. The velvet seats are stained with decades of cola spills, and the overhead lights flicker weakly, like they're fighting off the shadows clinging to every corner. The clock strikes midnight as the projection hums to life, spinning its reels relentlessly. And in this aged, creaky cinema, a lone employee prepares for his shift to end. But tonight, there's more than just an empty theater echoing back to him. Tonight, the room whispers. Danny was a simple guy, a college dropout who had taken the nighttime job because it paid enough to cover his bills and didn't require much social interaction. Perfect for someone like him. Wearing his worn-out uniform and armed with a flashlight, he was king of this decaying palace. His duties were elementary: sweep up scattered popcorn, prepare for the following day's matinees, and lock up once the last movie ended. Easy money, he'd always said. But that Friday night, as the last few patrons filed out of the theater, an older man stopped at the door and turned to Danny. "You know, this theater has seen some things," he began, dragging his voice like it was stuck in syrup. His eyes glimmered with candor, but also something more, a veiled warning. "Sure, buddy. All old theaters have stories, right?" Danny responded, waving him off with a smile. The man didn't follow the cue. Instead, he leaned closer and whispered, "In the projection room, there's a shadow. If you see it, don't let it know you're looking." Taken aback, but trying not to show it, Danny faked a laugh and politely led him to the exit. The man's words lingered even after the door chimed closed. Soon, silence enveloped the space once more. Only the creaks of the building settling and the hum of the air vents kept him company as he carried out his tasks. Around 12:30, task list completed, Danny found himself drawn to the projection room. He didn't believe in ghosts, but the old man's comment was eating at him. What was it about shadows anyway? They were the absence of light. Entirely ordinary, weren't they? He climbed the spiral staircase up to the tiny, windowed room high above the cinema screens. He told himself it was to shut the place down for the night, but a lingering curiosity had other motives. The projection room was cramped and filled with the smell of burnt metal and overheated film. The machines emitted a low, rhythmic churn, pushing old-fashioned reels of some indie movie the theater insisted on showing. Danny flipped the main switch on the control panel, the projectors groaning before they stilled. Standing there in the quiet, shadows cast by stray beams of light seemed oddly alive, as if they pulsed and shifted, like something breathing. Danny chalked it up to an overstimulated imagination. Turning to leave, something pricked the edge of his peripheral vision, a shadow against the far wall. It was humanoid, if a human could be amorphous and wrong, lacking solid lines while brimming with shapes that all felt misplaced. He froze. His heart raced so loudly it drowned out the sound of his own breathing. The old man's words stormed back into his thoughts. "If you see it, don't let it know you're looking." But how? Could it already sense his fear? Was that why its vague edges vibrated like a radio struggling for signal? Danny forced from himself a calm facade, slowly averting his gaze and looking toward the cluttered workbench in front of him. His pulse was storming in his chest, louder and louder, making it harder to stay composed. The odd air grew heavier, colder. Danny's neck prickled, sweat trailing down it. He didn't dare turn back, yet in the silence behind him, there was movement. He could hear the shifting, a change in weight pressing faintly against the floorboards. Something was there, breathing, its very presence bending ordinary reality. The exit key. His trembling hand reached out and snatched the key resting on the cluttered workbench. With determined steps, he headed for the stairs, though his legs were reluctant, carrying the lead-like weight of his fear. A deep sound ripped through the air, a guttural, haywire distortion. It wasn't a scream, but some twilight noise you'd expect from the sun before it surrenders to night. The shadow, he knew, wasn't just behind him now. It was around him, A sudden pull. Danny stumbled. His flashlight tumbled down the metallic staircase, disappearing into the abyss below. Remaining calm was futile, as adrenaline filled him with raw panic. His lips quivered in an unbidden prayer, something he hadn't done since childhood. I didn't see you," he stuttered, as if uttering it aloud mattered. But logic wasn't relevant here. Descending into the theater's main floor was like wading through quicksand while blindfolded. Cold dread nipped at his heels, urging him to surrender. His mind told him to run, but his feet were stubborn and slow. How could he ignore the presence that hung over his shoulder? A curtain of unnatural cold? He didn't look back. Couldn't. He wouldn't challenge whatever claimed possession of that cursed space. Bursting through the front doors, Danny collapsed against the pavement, gasping. That night, the theater locked its doors for what would be the last time, at least for Danny. The next morning, when the day shift manager found the key lying just inside the front door, Danny was inaccessible, leaving only a frantic text message. "I quit. Don't ask why, and don't go into the projection room." They say no one took the warning seriously. After all, there was money to earn. A week later, another projectionist disappeared. They went into the room mid-shift, telling someone they'd heard a strange creak. They never came out. Now, the theater sits empty, boarded, forgotten. Yet, around midnight, if you walk by, you might hear the faint hum of a projector spinning, and something else. Breathing, waiting,